Well, I hope all of you had as wonderful a Thanksgiving as we did. We had a house full of folks from Monday till yesterday morning, so that was fun. We're a little tired, but that was fun. And I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. You just heard what was read, what Lauren read from Romans, and there's a lot of kind of admonitions about put off the works of darkness, put on the things of God. So keep that in mind, but I'm not going to talk about that passage, right? Just keep it in mind. I want to actually have us look at Isaiah chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. That was the second passage we read. But keep in mind what Romans says, because you'll see how it fits. Our theme as we begin Advent, this being the first Sunday of the new Christian year, the theme is hope. And a part of the hope that is envisioned on this first Sunday of the Christian calendar, when we're thinking about the promises made about the coming Messiah, the focus for this first Sunday, the hope, is prophetic hope. I mean, that's part of the idea, is that Israel's prophets for hundreds of years held out this hope that God would act, that a Messiah would come, that the kingdom would be established, that things would get better. Whether the Israelites were in Babylonian captivity or whatever their dire circumstances, there was this hope that one day something was going to change. God was going to redeem them, was going to save them. And so I want us particularly to look at this passage from Isaiah for that reason, because this is one of those penultimate passages about hope, and that's what this Sunday is about. So looking at Isaiah chapter 2, if you would, it'd be helpful if I was there and not in Matthew. So let me just get over there. And you think you have everything ready. All right. Isaiah chapter 2. The word which Isaiah the son of Amoz saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Now it will come about that in the last days the mountain of the house of the Lord will be established as chief of the mountains, and will be raised above the hills, and the nations will stream to it. And many peoples will come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us concerning his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For the law will go forth from Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he will judge between the nations, and will render decisions for many peoples, and they will hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, and never again will they learn war. Come, house of Jacob, let us walk in the light of the Lord. It's really interesting that word for word, this also appears in Micah chapter 4. Verses 2 through 4 here appears word for word in Micah chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. I mean, not just kind of similar, word for word, exactly the same lesson. Which leads us to believe that Micah knew Isaiah's sermon. And it was so good that he preached it as well, right? He knew this message from Isaiah. Micah picks it up. And of course, Micah is the prophet who says that from Bethlehem will come forth one from the Lord. So Micah is kind of famous in terms of messianic prophecies because he's the one that says it's from Bethlehem that this Messiah will come. But he's preaching the same sermon, the same lesson, proclaiming the same words that Isaiah is as well. And it's a message of hope and promise. And I want us to notice how this hope is described. It starts by saying, now it will come about in the last days. In other words, in kind of a final age, in the conclusion of things, to the Israelites, Isaiah is saying, now when things come to their conclusion, in that last epic time, this is what it will be like. And it's a description of the coming age. And notice what he describes. It's metaphorical. I don't think it's literal. The mountain of the house of the Lord will be established as the chief of the mountains. He doesn't mean that Mount Zion which was the mountain on which the temple was built. The mountain of the house of the Lord is actually going to grow. I don't think he's saying that, nor are they thinking he's saying that. I think what they're thinking is he's saying in a metaphorical way, yes, Mount Zion, where the temple is located, will become the most significant place. Right? It will become that place to which all peoples will look. He says it will be established as chief of the mountains and will be raised above the hills, and the nations will stream to it. So Isaiah says the day is coming when all nations of the earth will be drawn to Jerusalem, to the temple of the Lord on Mount Zion. It will become the most significant place in all the earth. So Isaiah's hope is not a hope about Israel alone, is it? It's a hope that Israel will be the ones through whom all nations will come to the Lord. Isaiah is not talking about a hope for Jewish people alone, but a hope for the whole world. Notice how it goes on to describe this. Verse 3, and many peoples will come and say. So here's what these Gentile heathen peoples are going to be saying. When this happens, here's what they're going to be saying. Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord. Whether they're Egyptians or Babylonians or people from, the far reaches of the earth, they're all saying, let's go to Jerusalem. Let's go to the temple. Let's go to Mount Zion, to the mountain of the God of Israel, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us concerning his ways and that we may walk in his paths. So the future hope and dream is that people will want to follow the ways of God. And the message being proclaimed to the Jews is all of these nations around that are presently our enemies and have their own gods and very much do not worship our God. The day is coming when they will want to come and worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and follow his ways. That's the picture. The end of verse 3, the last line, or the last part there. For the law will go forth from Zion and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. So this message will be proclaimed outward from Jerusalem and draw all the peoples of the earth to Jerusalem to live according to what they have heard. Verse 4. And he, speaking of God, will judge between the nations. Now, this is so important because I keep trying to emphasize that we have to change our idea of judgment. Most of us, when we hear about the judgment of God, we are terrified. We're afraid, oh no, God's going to judge. I'm in trouble. We don't realize that the judgments of God in Scripture are not like that at all. Notice what happens when God judges. And he will judge between the nations and render decisions for many peoples, and they will hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, and never again will they learn war. When God judges, peace breaks out. Right? This is not when God judges, certain people get cast into eternal fire. That's not what Isaiah is talking about. He's saying when God judges, God resolves the conflicts that keep us at odds. And all of a sudden, in the light of God's wise judgments, everyone says, he's right. We can live in harmony. We can live in peace. There's no need for war. Let's therefore turn all of our weapons into farm equipment, right? We need farm equipment so we can plant crops and harvest and enjoy life. We don't need weapons anymore. That's what the judgments of God bring about. Because as we keep trying to emphasize, is God's judgments are restorative, not retributive. God does not judge to pay back eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. You did wrong, you're going to get wrong from me, God says. No, God's judgments restore people to peace, to unity. I mean, an outlandish hope Isaiah is talking about. I mean, could any Israelite dare believe that all the world wars of their world were suddenly somehow going to cease? Egypt wasn't going to be sending armies up to fight the Babylonians and tramping right through Israel, which is what they did. They had Egypt to the south and either Assyria prior to Babylon, but an empire to the north, and everyone sent their armies through Israel to get to one another, and sometimes fought their battles on Israel's territory against one another. Israel was in the worst possible geographical location politically. They were a little nation between powerful empires, and they caught the flack from both sides, right? And Isaiah is saying the day is going to come when the wars are going to cease. It's not only you fighting against others, but even others fighting in the world. That's what the judgments of God will bring. Probably many of us know the statement of Martin Luther King, "The arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice." Do you think he made that up? That's not Martin Luther King coming up with an idea. Actually, it didn't originate with him. It originated with an abolitionist named Theodore Parker in 1853. Martin Luther King took his statement and amplified it. But when he says the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice, he's not hoping in a wishful sense it'll bend towards justice. He knows what Isaiah says. It will bend towards justice. Why? Because in the last days, the mountain of the house of the Lord is going to be lifted up, and all nations are going to stream toward it and to it, and God himself is going to judge righteously and with justice, and peace will be the result. Because where there is no justice, there is no peace. If people feel like they're getting a raw deal, there's no peace. They're angry, they're bitter, and often they're in conflict. So what Martin Luther King knew was he knew his prophets, his Old Testament prophets. And he had a hope, a firm belief that this is where it will end up. Not because it looks like it's ending up right like that right now. Not because I look at the world and go, I think that's coming about. But because you believe that that is what God has promised, that is the end to which God is taking all things. And that truly in the last days, that will be what will be. So what does this mean in terms of practical hope? I think that's the last verse in our reading from Isaiah. Because everything is will. Before that, it's this will be the case. It's not now, but it will be the case. The mountain of the house of the Lord will be lifted up. Zion will become this most significant mountain, this chief among all the mountains, among all the hills. And one day people will stream to it and they will say, everything has been future until verse 5. Come, house of Jacob, let us walk in the light of the Lord. Now there is an admonition in the present based upon a vision for the future. The future's vision is, peace, no more war, God's judgment bringing about restoration and harmony and unity. That's the future. But here's the present. Isaiah says, come, house of Jacob, let us walk in the light of the Lord. That's practical hope. Practical hope is when I live like the future I know is coming. And I live like that somewhat obstinately, stubbornly, refusing to give in to the present conditions of our world, which is not at all at peace. Right? Airspace over Venezuela has been declared null and void, closed off. Oh, great. Let's have some more conflict. Right? Very discouraging every time we hear about conflict and the potential for conflict. But to me, Christian hope is this, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord. Let's walk in the light of what God is declaring to be the future reality. Let's just walk that way. Let's walk as people of justice, people who trust in the judgments of God bringing about peace, people who know the world's going to be united and conflict's going to cease, so why should I continue any of it now, right? I'm going to go ahead and get ahead of the game and be at peace now. I'm going to try and be at peace with others. I'm going to try and, not buy into the conflict and the rhetoric. Why? Because that's the practical way and practically how we can have hope in a future we really believe is coming, if we really believe it's coming. And if we look at ourselves, do we have hope? Well, the answer to that is, well, how am I living? Am I living according to the age that I believe is coming, or am I living according to the present age, only having wishful thoughts about a future that's different? Remember, I told you, can you keep in mind what Romans was saying? I think Romans is paired up on this Sunday with, like this passage in Isaiah, for that very purpose. What's Paul saying in Romans? He's saying, in essence, come, house of Jacob, let us walk in the light of the Lord. Let's put away the deeds of darkness. Let's mortify the flesh. Let's not do these things. Let's live differently. He's speaking from a place of hope. Because we hope not only in the transformation of the world, but in our own transformation, I hope that I will not be who I tend to be today, right? I think we probably all have some of those features, some of those bugs, if you want to use software terminology, in our lives, those things about ourselves that we wish would be different. Your tendency to be critical or to be impatient or to be judgmental or to be antagonistic or whatever it is. We all recognize something about ourselves. Do we really have a hope in being transformed? That one day, by God's grace and according to his wise judgment, that will no longer be my problem. God is going to transform me. Well, what does it mean for me to attempt to live practically in that hope? Well, I think day by day, I try and be a little less antagonistic. And day by day, I try and be a little more patient rather than, I can't stand these stupid people. They drive me nuts, right? So easy to think that. But a practical hope is remembering, but one day that won't be my tendency. And if I have hope, then I try day by day to put that away. That's practical hope. It's not a wishful dream of a future time, but it's the engagement right now in the present of the future that we believe God is preparing for us and through us for the world. Advent begins with hope. What is the hope? As was shared during children's time, the hope is in the promises of God. And because we believe that God keeps his promises, it's not a kind of wishful thinking, it's a certainty. It's a firm belief that when God says, I will do this, then we can rest assured he will do that, even if right now nothing seems to be moving that way. And then the encouragement to us is, so let's live like that's coming, like that's the future. I like the way C.S. Lewis said at one time. He says, if you know you're going to be living in Argentina later, wouldn't it be good to learn some Spanish now? That's if we know that the world is moving towards the kingdom of God, wouldn't it be good to learn some kingdom ways now? I mean, just kind of already get ahead of it. Start living the kingdom ways now. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control, loving our enemies. Give up all rancor and bitterness and malicious talk and divisiveness. Just give it all up. It's not where the world's going to be later anyway. God in his grace and love will make you give it up. So why don't you just give it up, right? Instead of him having to drag it from your clenched little fist, just go, okay, God, take it. I'll stop. Help me to stop being that way. I think that's what it means to live according to the light of the God of Jacob. Live according to that light. It makes us strange people in the world. It really does, right? If we really refuse to hate our enemies, to think ill of them, to disparage them, to be afraid of them, to fear them, if we really won't do that, we will seem like very odd people indeed. Because everyone else is going to warn us, well, those people are pretty dangerous. You got to be careful. Don't trust them. It's not where the world's going to be. Let us live differently. Mortify the deeds of the flesh. Let us walk in the Spirit. This is how we hope in the coming Messiah.